The trucks are about to take to the high banks here at Daytona International Speedway for our second practice of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series right here on Speed. Again, I mentioned second practice. Earlier today, they were out on the racetrack. It was a little bit warmer. The temperatures come down just a bit. The wind about the same, around 11 miles per hour. Again, coming from second from the turn number 2 all the way to turn number 3. Well, again, Rick Allen, Phil Parsons, Michael Waltrip with you for our second practice of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. Now, I knew I was probably going to be the first to say that of the group, but we talked about changes. We've obviously got a new title sponsor. In the first practice, the changes that we've seen between practice number 1 and practice number 2, are they going to be major? Are we going to see things that are going to make a difference on the track?
Well, most of the guys, Michael, were talking about what you were talking about in the first practice, the track being a little bit rougher than thought it was last year. Everybody came with their setups that they knew that worked last year, and everybody was hitting the racetrack. I talked to Horner today. I said, how's your truck? He said, if I can keep it up off the racetrack, it's pretty good. So I think all the guys were really throwing a little bit of a curve with no testing here last month.
But the first practice, it was calm. There wasn't a whole lot going on. Right. 2 and 3 truck packs, guys just trying to get their setup right. Things are fixing to pick up here, Rick. These guys are going to get in packs. They're going to want to know what their trucks are going to do. The conditions are getting more like they'll be on Friday night when they throw the green flag on the Camping World Series, and this is going to be a good practice. You can see already trucks everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. We never had more than 5 trucks at a time together. Now we've got about 15 trucks within about a second right now.
Which are going to pick the speeds up, which are going to make the bumps probably even a little harder to get through. But let's find out what's going on in the garage. We're going to start with Adam Alexander.
And the true education process will begin, Rick, for guys like J.R. Fitzpatrick, one of the number of guys running for Rookie of the Year in 2009. He was 5th quick on the charts in that opening session. How will he do in session number 2? Well, we'll find out shortly. But let's tell you a little bit about J.R. Fitzpatrick. He's a former NASCAR champion running north of the border in Canada, but he wants to make his home in racing in the United States. 3 starts a year ago. Martinsville, a half mile, the 1 mile at Phoenix, and then the end of the year, the 1.5 miles at Homestead, Miami. And now here he is, making his 4th career start in the trucks on NASCAR's biggest stage at the Daytona International Speedway. We'll see how he does, Ray.
And Adam, you start talking about those rookies. I want to throw another guy into that mix. James Busher, driving the number 10 for Circle Bar Racing this year. I think this kid has an incredible amount of talent. He won his first ever ARCA REMAX Series race at the tender age of 16. Believe it or not, he's just 18 right now, and just this last weekend he picked up the biggest victory of his career right here at Daytona in the ARCA REMAX Series. I think this kid has a lot of talent, but what really strikes me, guys, is as I watch the trucks roll out of the garage today, is that diversity amongst the real grizzled veterans in this series and the real raw rookies. We've got a great mixture this year of young and old, and I think that's going to be a great story to follow throughout 2009.
A big difference in age. I mean, we talked specifically about this racetrack. Only 1 driver of the 9 races has been under the age of 40 when they won this race.
That tells you a little bit about what it takes to be successful at Daytona. It takes a lot of experience, a lot of know-how, and patience. You know, we saw Bobby Hamilton race to the front from the never even knew he was in the race. We saw the same thing Saturday night in the Sprint Cup Series shootout. Kevin Harvick, he laid back and he came up when the chips were down and he won the race. So this race, like last Saturday night, can be won on 2 or 3 different strategies, I think. Martin just laid right up front all night and he got a win, but we've seen other guys come from the back to win.
You know, a number of times in the 9 years, the guy that won the race led the most laps. When Bobby Hamilton won, you were talking about, he led 1 lap, the very last one.
Is that where they got all crowded over there at Victory Lane?
Yeah, Jimmy Spencer went in there first, and they had to run him off.
Get him out of there?
Yeah. Pulled him back out.
We've had it all, haven't we, here at Daytona?
Yes, we have.
We've definitely had it all.
Oh, guy running up the hill there. Doesn't like what he feels, wants to get up out of the way.
Is that Todd up there, Todd Bodine? It is Todd Bodine.
On the high side.
Wonder what he thought. Is the engine killed?
I don't know. It looks like he's
definitely off the pace.
Yeah, he may not be under power right now.
Talk to us,
Sounds
Todd.
pretty quiet. Ran it out of gas, and that's intentional somewhat. Although you don't want to be in the middle of a pack when you run out of gas. You want to see how much fuel that your fuel cell will pick up.
Pretty good. They get up behind me and I get a little loose. There's a little bit of a push off. It really wasn't too bad. I That's why I wanted to keep going and get the tires good and hot. I figured you had 4 or 5 more there. That's my fault. Should have given you a little more warning. I was fixing to warn you the next time by that you should have 4 or 5, but...
And they're talking about Mike Hillman Jr. was saying, I should have warned you, we thought you had 4 or 5 more laps. That's a pretty big discrepancy, I would think. 4 or 5 laps here at a 2.5-mile racetrack.
Yeah, but sometimes it's really hard to tell when you go in and out as many times as they did in the first practice session. They want to know how much, we started talking about before Todd talked on the radio, how much fuel they can get out of that fuel cell. So that's really critical. Now they'll go back in, fill it up with fuel. They'll know exactly how much it takes, and then they'll get another good fuel mileage run here towards the end of practice, or maybe even the next practice tomorrow, to kind of see where they are. But now they will know exactly how much that fuel cell will hold until it runs out of fuel.
Little bigger pack running now here at Daytona International Speedway for the Camping World Truck Series, our second practice of the 2009 season, and it's already getting 2, 3, and 4 wide down the backstretch. Speed presentation of NASCAR Camping World Truck Series practice from Daytona is presented by Camping World. Camping World, our lower prices and friendly service will make you a happy camper. Brought to you in part by Verizon Wireless. Call more people, use 0 minutes, only on America's largest mobile-to-mobile calling family, Verizon Wireless. And by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward.
It's going to be a happy camper here Friday night.
Sure
Somebody
is.
comes to Daytona in a truck and gets the win. It's probably not going to get a whole lot better than that.
You know, Michael, we talked about the speeds when these guys get together. Drafting is going to be so great. We only saw 5, maybe 6 trucks in that first practice session. You could see Mike Skinner was the fastest truck in all of that first practice at a little bit over 183. Well, this practice already, Ty Bodine 6 miles an hour faster than what Mike Skinner ran in the first practice. As a matter of fact, 16 trucks are already faster than that fastest time from the first practice session.
And that's just because of the amount of trucks that globbed up. You know, you're in the back of a big old pack of trucks with that hole they're blowing in the air. You can really make a run. Brian Scott had a thought about going under that line to make a pass, but he didn't quite go for that.
We're seeing them move around a lot more on the racetrack, getting a little closer to each other, kind of feeling out what it's going to be like come Friday.
Yeah, this is necessary, Rick. You don't want to do it, but it's a necessary evil. You got to get out there. You got to mix it up. You know you don't want to take a chance with your truck, but you also need to put it in a few positions that you know you're going to be in come race time.
10-4, 10-4. You got 2 more to pass you, then a 5-truck opening back to 3 more. Slowing on the bottom in front of you.
Here Johnny Benson said he wanted to go all the way to the back to see what his truck would do back there. But, you know, this is a great simulation for what we're going to see Friday night. But it's nothing like what we're going to see Friday night, because we're going to have trucks all over this racetrack, 3 and 4 wide, bouncing and thrashing and carrying on.
Listen to this on board. See if we can listen to Johnny down through the corner. We talked about how rough it is. Listen to this engine. See if we can hear it changing tones. See him playing with that gas.
Did he stay above the bumps, though?
A little bit.
Are they pretty much down on the
When
bottom?
he was through 1 and 2 the lap before.
Good through the center, tight off, but it's an absolute every once in a while.
Now that's all the information he's feeling in one turn.
Yeah.
Good in, loose off. Yeah. Look, now let's see if we can hear one more time. Oh, he's up high again. Man, that's what it feels like to be out there with that, playing with that gas, surveying all the trucks, what they're doing. Look at the ground he made on the high side, Bill.
Got a good run going right here on J.R. Fitzpatrick in that 7 truck. You can hear the sound of the engine change when he gets side by side with J.R.
Ray, what's happening with Kyle?
Well, guys, we watched him in that earlier practice, and he was bottoming out really bad. Now, crew chief Doug George has had his work cut out for him today. They cut the cross member out of the bottom. They moved the trailing arm mounts, did all kinds of things to try to give that truck more travel. Now, I'm telling you, they are traveling an incredible amount on the left front of that number 51 truck. I won't give you the numbers, but it's a lot more than most of the other Toyotas down here in this garage. Kyle Busch said it feels pretty good. The last time they were on the racetrack, they just scraped the lower left front of the front splitter a little bit, so they made one shock change on the front, and right now Kyle says it's coming to him. Yeah. Adam?
A moment ago, Ray, the guys upstairs were talking about defending series champion Johnny Benson. And on the radio, he was asking his crew chief, Rocky Ryan, to help him move around on the racetrack, experimenting on where his truck was better, the low line or the high line. Now, if you looked at the numbers from practice number 1, Johnny was not that great. Outside the top 20, they only ran 10 laps. I asked him about that between sessions. He said, no big deal. We're just experimenting and finding out where we need to be. And if I said Rocky Ryan's his crew chief, Rocky Ryan is his spotter. Trip Bruce, the man calling the shots for JB.
That duo staying together from their championship season a year ago.
Kyle Busch, you know, Phil, we talked about it in the first.
I think he's blown up.
Yeah, we got a problem with the 51. What's going on, Ray?
He's talking about losing oil pressure right there, and they said that somebody came on the radio, said he was definitely splitting oil out, and we see that smoke coming out of the right front. So maybe just a loose oil line, but they're going to shut the motor off on that 51, bring it in, and find out what the trouble is.
Too hot.
So in the start of our second practice, the biggest news is that Kyle Busch is having problems with his number 51 Toyota Tundra. He's going to bring that into the garage. So George will take a look at it. They'll figure it out, and we'll give you the update. Get fired up. Speed is dueling in Daytona. Tomorrow, the most exciting qualifying event in NASCAR is only on Speed. The Gatorade Duel at Daytona. Be there for the 2 races that set the field for the Daytona 500. You don't want to miss the Gatorade Duel at Daytona live tomorrow, 2 Eastern, right here on Speed. And the caution came out as we were just heading off to break, and that was because there was smoke coming out from underneath the 51. They thought it might have blown an engine. They're taking a look. You can see the oil on the inside of the wheel. There is the smoke coming out as he came out of turn 2.
Yeah, right in front of the 16 of Brian Scott. Looked like he was still on the throttle, Michael, when it started smoking.
Yeah, more than likely from that vantage point, there was a broken oil line or something. See that 16 truck of Brian Scott get sideways. You wonder if maybe there was a little bit of oil flying on top of on the track where you got on see all the oil. So yeah, Brian Scott could have very easily gotten some of that oil.
What have they diagnosed, Ray?
Well, it's definitely an oil line that has come loose. They're trying to figure out exactly where it's coming from. It's not a blown engine as far as they have determined right now. So the guys are going to work under there, have flashlights to take a closer look, and a couple of them underneath. So we'll try to give you more information as we know it. But Kyle said he doesn't believe that it was terminal in the engine, just that they need to get this cleaned back up. But as you saw when we showed you the wheel there, a great deal of oil has actually come off of there. And, you know, when you look around in there, you're talking Kyle had a pretty fortunate situation that oil didn't get out here on this part of the wheel or on the back wheels and spin him out and crash.
Somebody needs to get Ray a rag so he can wipe his finger off. Again, we're under caution. They are making sure the track doesn't have any oil on it. They'll clean it up and send the trucks back out. We'll be there for it. Trucks have made it back out on the racetrack, and we're here to cover it. Camping World Truck Series practice. It's the second practice of the day, and the sun is actually not on the racetrack any longer. It's not beating down on the track, at least.
And that's good for these guys. That's how it's going to be Friday night when they race. We're riding with Tom Bodine. The last time we were on board with him, he ran out of gas. So they went in, filled it up, got a good reading on how much gas that Tundra would hold, and now he's out there to see what kind of mileage he can get, and they'll have a determination after that exactly how many laps they can make it on Friday night before they got to come to pit road.
Goat, Ricky Carmichael in that number 4 Chevy Silverado, fielded by Kevin Harvick Incorporated.
We have our own Goat.
We do.
Too. Absolutely.
Yep. One of our camera operators we call Goat. Does a spectacular job week in and week out.
I think this is going to be fun to follow. This guy's a world champion motocross racer, and it's going to be fun to watch him try to get his legs under him in this Camping World Truck Series.
You know, it's really funny because Rick and I, just as we left the garage area before this practice started to come up here to the booth, we were talking to Ricky, and he said, you know, the motocross track here was pretty rough. He said, the oval's not much smoother than that.
Yeah, it's also a little bumpy.
Okay, good. Let's hang with it here and see if we can run these guys back down.
Andy Houston, I believe. Is that the voice that I just heard there?
Andy will be the spotter. You know, great race car driver, a winner here in the Truck Series a few years ago.
Oh, we got him. We're shutting off.
Uh-oh.
That's not good.
Okay, back it down. Back it down.
Wonder what he determined that was all about.
I wonder if maybe they were trying to figure out fuel mileage as well, and maybe the thing started cutting out.
What's it doing now? Are we out of fuel?
The question.
2 on the fuel pressure.
I believe I'd turn around instead of trying to make it all the way around this 2.5
All right,
miles.
just coast around if you can.
We could drive the
Yeah,
other
just
way.
try to idle it back around here. It might be trying to suck a line shut or something like that.
He's just actually coming off of pit road right now.
Yeah, I believe I would have
Just
turned
stop
around
then.
on pit
Just
road.
stop. Pull on to the inside. There you go. Pull on to the inside.
And the red flag will fly.
The officials will attend to Ricky Carmichael in that number 4 truck. Although we stay green. So another driver, it looks like, has run their truck out of fuel.
Didn't sound like they did it on purpose, though.
Yeah, he was wondering. I mean, his was more of a question. Could we have run out of fuel?
Right. Tottenham had that in mind when theirs run out.
Exactly. I don't think you would have left. They would have, you know, more than likely they would drain the fuel cell out and then put a couple 3 gallons in there. They're going to run out and run 2 or 3 laps, something like that. But see, Kyle actually is doing a little cleaning there, because remember all that oil from that oil line or whatever, and he's wiping that down with brake clean to try to get all that oil out. And that's one thing. It's hard to it's difficult to probably diagnose where that oil is coming from, because there's going to be oil everywhere.
Remember that new rule, you only have 12 guys that can work on the truck. Well, this driver's putting one of those jobs to use right now. Coverage of NASCAR Camping World Truck Series practice in Daytona is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. By Verizon Wireless, call more people, use 0 minutes. Only on America's largest mobile-to-mobile calling family, Verizon Wireless. And by Old Spice, the official deodorant of NASCAR. In caution has come out. Ricky Carmichael, I believe, ran out of fuel as he was just coming off of pit road. He stopped his truck. Wasn't anywhere near the racing groove. He was actually on a paved area in the infield, but they wanted to make sure that truck got back into the garage. So they're pushing him around the racetrack. He will make his way into the garage. Let's go into the garage now and talk with Adam Alexander.
And it's been a struggle for TJ Bell here in this second practice session of the weekend. They have been unable to get any competitive time on track, and the reason is the front end is bottoming out. So you can see the crew making the adjustments they need so this truck will run smoothly. TJ Bell, a guy who was very successful in 08, 5 consecutive top 10s at one point in the middle part of last season, but big time question marks for him this year, not only on track, but is what his future is. Right now, they are planning to run 2 races here at Daytona, next week at California, and hope something good happens from there. As of now, though, not enough funding to continue on, Ray.
And Adam, of course, you got to keep a list going to know what drivers are in what trucks this year. Lots of new numbers, new paint schemes, new teams. And here's one of them also, the number 24 for David Starr. He'll be part of Harris Trucking, and they've got Zachary Construction on. And again, the 24, that's a number we'll have to get used to seeing. He and his teammate Terry Cook, who is now 25. But David Starr was just talking to his crew chief, Jason Miller, on the radio and saying, I need a new set of shocks in the front that helps drop this thing down closer. He says, I need the drivability, and to get that, we need the aero down. So they're going to put shocks on the front right now that'll help him lower the front end a little bit of this brand new truck team.
Trucks back out on the racetrack. Matt Crafton, Ryan Scott working their way. You saw the sparks flying off of that 16.
You know, generally, Rick, we wonder who's at the top of the sheet and who's the fastest truck. Todd Bodine has locked that honor up for this practice.
I believe so, yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to get near that. He got out there in the first pack of trucks, got a good run, ran, what, about a half a second faster than most everyone else.
Yeah, even more than that.
Even more than that.
About 0.8 of a second.
But now, maybe even more importantly, these guys have got the conditions like they're going to see tomorrow night. The clouds are over the track. It's cooling down. So they're more concerned about how their truck's driving right now than ever even caring about running a lap as fast as High Boat Iron did.
Yeah, right now the stopwatch is really immaterial, or the scoring monitor immaterial to these guys, because they just want to get the trucks where they can drive them. They know they can hold these things wide open if they need to for an extended period of time.
But when we go to California next week, all about the stopwatch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Stopwatch and a scoring monitor.
We just want to know how fast we can run lap after lap. Is the truck going to fall off? Can I keep up that same pace the whole run? So the agenda is quite different when we come to Daytona.
Seem too wide now.
Good little 5-truck pack right there. May grab Taylor Malsom as they go by him.
Look at there, 3 wide. That makes you nervous. Didn't last long though, so you get over it. See the overflow spewing out of the 17 trucks. That Timothy Peters had a little bit of water shooting out of it, so they might want to address their the tape on the front of the grill of the truck. That's how they cool these engines, Phil. You know, they run that air in there. They want to put as much tape on the front as they can because it makes the truck more aerodynamic. But you can't push the wind. You can't push that button too far.
And we've seen that happen so many times where they tried to fudge that just a little bit too much and end up shooting some water out of there, having to make a green flag pit stop.
Now we're starting to see more and more trucks getting into a line. Terry Cook just in front of Mike Skinner. Now Skinner's going to duck to the outside, get a little fresh air on the front end of that truck. We are seeing them line up here at Daytona International Speedway. Now Skinner in the first practice was the quickest.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of trucks here in this little glob, as Mikey calls it, here in just a few minutes. Looks like Terry Cook is going to make his way to pit road. There's the 6 of Colin Brown. There's the 7 of J.R. Fitzpatrick. Stacy Compton now in that 60 truck. Mike Skinner in the 5. There's Johnny Sauter. He's now in a 13 truck.
This is shaping up to be a pretty good pack.
Yeah, it is. This is going to be way more indicative of what these guys are going to see Friday night, and then what we saw in the first practice with only the maximum of about 5 trucks together.
This is an abbreviated practice. The second practice, it goes from 5 to 5:50. So as we're at the bottom of the hour now, about another 20 minutes for this practice. And we're starting to see action pick up on the racetrack.
Look at that black truck right of your screen, a little bit right of center. That's the 53 of Justin Hobgood. Justin right now is the 3rd quickest truck so far in this practice session. He's hanging in there pretty good with these fast trucks, doing a nice job.
You can see Skinner, his nose is all up off the ground. A different agenda for several of these trucks. You can see the 53, like you said, his nose is way up, but then right beside him, Matt Crafton, his nose is all down. They're running the same speed. Explain all that to me, Phil.
I don't know. I don't know how to do it. 2 ways to skin a cat. This is going to be a great little draft right here.
Now again, the numbers, as far as if we're going to watch numbers, Todd Bodine ran at 47.573. Second quickest was Taylor Malsom at 48. Actually, it was 48.3 something just moments ago, and that has just changed to 48.275. So action's picking up here on the racetrack.
That's a good draft. That's exactly what you want to be in the middle of right now to determine how your truck's going to act Friday night. Now, your goal for this whole practice is to get out of here without hurting your truck. So there's a fine line you got to walk. You want to be in the middle of it, but you don't want anything to go wrong.
We see Kyle Busch on the left of your screen there taking a look under the hood of his race truck. Ray, did they determine what the problem was?
They did, Rick, and it's good news down here. It's not a total engine failure. It was a fitting that broke off the valve cover to let all that oil come out. And as we've been showing you, Kyle's been right in the middle of cleaning that up with brake clean. They've got the rear of the truck all ready to go, ready to put tires back on it. And I'd say another 5 or 10 minutes to the front, they should be good. They've repaired that fitting, and they're checking the oil level, and they should be ready to take this 51 Mikosuki Toyota back to the racetrack. They don't think it's going to be any major problem.
You know, more than likely, that's the line that cools the valve springs and the valve cover here, and that's a -4 line more than likely, which is a 1/4 inch in diameter, inside diameter. And you saw all the oil that thing put out. They have some of these lines that are called a -16, which means it's a 1 inch inside diameter. If you break that line, you can imagine how quick you can empty an oil tank.
You hear that? He had to come totally out of the gas there. Rick Crawford bounced up the hill. We saw how rough this track is and how hard his truck moved up the hill, and Johnny had to come off the gas to keep from hitting him.
Johnny Benson down on the bottom of the racetrack. We're riding along with him as he moves up behind the 5 of Mike Skinner. While he does that, Johnny Sauter and that 13 moves down on the bottom of the racetrack and right on by. Second practice for the Camping World Truck Series continues here on Speed. Every Tuesday night on Speed, hang out with Vita Guerra for all new episodes of Living the Low Life. Vita checks out what's under the hood and inside the world of lowriders. Living the low life with host Vita Guerra. Tuesday nights, 8 Eastern, exclusively on Speed.
We saw the run that Todd had coming off the corner. Actually had to back off to keep from running in the back of Johnny, and then went ahead and went by him anyway.
Man, these guys are mixing it up.
Johnny Sauter on the inside, leading that pack.
Here, Todd.
Well, you could hear him bottom out.
Right. You could also hear him coming off the gas. He wasn't sure when it bounced, which way it was going to bounce. Had another truck, the truck of TJ Bell, right on his outside corner, so he couldn't bounce up the hill, so he elected to let off the gas.
And that's experience, too.
Let's see what he does in this one. I love this view.
Again, that's Todd Bodine. We're riding along. He's chasing it up the racetrack.
Big time backed off that time.
You can tell how rough this track is. And, you know, Phil, in defense of the track, it's probably not a whole lot rougher than it's ever been, but people are challenging these setups. They're trying to get that front end down on the road, be coil bound to take advantage of the aero all the way around the track, and it just makes the trucks and even the Sprint Cup cars, it makes them bounce around more.
It's a rougher ride. Now
it's a rougher ride, and the track's probably not any much rougher than it's ever been.
But every year you just creep up on it, don't you? A little bit more aggressive each time, which makes theoretically it seem like it's rougher.
Johnny Benson's view. He comes up on that 11 of TJ Bell. Looks like Bell was going to try to come down.
I think that would have been a mistake.
Yeah, he thought wiser of it. Stayed up the racetrack. Now he tucks in behind Johnny Benson.
Look at the way TJ's able just to, he let Johnny in that hole, but then he's able just to stick right with him. That's why this race is so exciting and will be so much fun for us to be a part of on Friday night, because you just can't get away from anybody. There's no way to escape.
Not only can you not get away from them, you don't want to get a big lead, because you know when they come and catch you, and you know they will, they're going to have so much momentum. There's no way you're going to keep them behind them. That's why people are so vulnerable on a restart here. If you got a leader, a green, white checker, late in the race, you have a leader in a restart. If the guy running second lets him get out there a little bit, he's like a duck in a shooting gallery.
And we thought that was going to be the case with James Busher in the restart of the ARCA Remax series on Saturday, but James Busher was able to hold off.
But
actually it was Joey Logano that was chasing him. We didn't think he was going to be able to hold him off, but he did and won that race.
This is a different world.
They weren't in trucks.
Yep, that's right.
The trucks are just crazy with the runs you can make.
Three of you are breaking away.
Three of you are breaking away for now. I think he should have added at the end of that.
Just slow one down the bottom up here, Todd. Bunch of slow ones. Just left that road.
And those slow ones will catch right up with them, too. They'll be a part of this draft by the time we come back around. So
it's amazing.
Hornaday said he'd about seen enough.
It's amazing how much faster these trucks get up to speed than their car counterparts, either Nationwide or Sprint Cup, because of all the additional horsepower that these trucks have.
And they have the horsepower because they have more drag. Yeah. So they have to have
the bigger greenhouse.
You're talking about 6-7 inches taller. The roof is 6 or 7 inches taller than they are on the Sprint Cup cars, and about 8 inches taller than they are on the Nationwide cars.
Adam Alexander.
Rookie of the Year contender Taylor Malsum is in the garage area trying to make some changes to that truck so it will drive better through turns 3 and 4. And when you're a young guy, it's good to have experience. The crew chief for Taylor, the guy you see left of your screen, Doug Walcott. In the last 2 years, he has worked with 7 different drivers. Only one of them a non-rookie. So Doug knows what it's like to work with guys making their first ever start in the truck series, or at least guys in the infancy part of their truck series career. And the guy spotting for him, Slugger Labby. Last year, Slugger worked with Scott Speed and really helped him. There you see Slugger on the spotter stand. Really helped Scott understand what it takes to be successful in NASCAR. So 2 good veterans leading a young driver, and so far they're doing a pretty good job.
You know, Doug Walcott won with one of those rookies last year. We talked about Scott Speed. Adam mentioned Scott Speed. They won at Dover.
Yeah.
Scott Speed's one of his very first truck starts and did a terrific job and won that race up there with Doug Walcott calling the shots.
Talked about that pack growing. Well, it grew, and now it has shrunk back down a bit as we've seen a few trucks make their way back into the garage to make final adjustments here as we wind down. About 10 minutes remaining in our second practice. We'll be right back. Speed presentation of NASCAR Camping World Truck Series practice from Daytona is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. And by Old Spice, the official deodorant of NASCAR. Practice continues. Todd Bodine again holding on to that top spot. That came early on in this practice session. Taylor Malsom in the 81. Randy Moss Motorsports. Teammate to Mike Skinner.
Looked like Shane Sieg in the 15 truck had his hands full as he entered turn 3 there for some reason.
Yeah, he didn't look like something. He got something he didn't like. The truck fell off the pace a little bit, but it got all wiggly.
See the difference in the first practice to this practice, and that's just a byproduct of having a lot more trucks out there at one time. A full 17 trucks, I believe, now ran faster in this practice session than Mike Skinner did in the first practice session, and he was quickest.
Terry Cook in that 25.
Just a few moments ago, right as we were going to commercial break, you see Terry waving as he's pulling back down off the racetrack. Watch Terry on the outside in that 25 truck. Cajun Industries Toyota. You see a little handful of steering wheel there, got a little bit loose coming off for.
But I don't believe he ever lifted.
No, never lifted. Didn't look like he
just worked it out and kept the hammer down on that CajunUSA.com Toyota.
You know, you see these guys get loose like that, and you can put these trucks, even if they're handling perfectly, in a position to get loose like that, or to lose their front end and push off the corner because of the way the air affects these trucks.
And that's the difficult line to walk as a driver. You know, you put yourself in that position. You think you're just seeing. You kind of know some places on the track and where other trucks are positioned, what your truck's probably going to do. And when you put it in that position, you confirm it does it. And your crew chief says, what are we going to do about that? You're like, I don't know, because it's pretty good everywhere else. Maybe I just better try to miss that spot right there. I mean, there's points in time during the course of a race and on any particular lap where you can get yourself in a bind no matter how good your truck's driving.
Talking about the bumpy part of this racetrack, or the bumpier part of the racetrack, right down on the double yellow line. We saw during qualifying for the Daytona 500. Some drivers actually tried to avoid those bumps and move up the racetrack just a bit, which you wouldn't think is the ideal line around the racetrack, but some don't want to have to deal with bumps.
Well, some cars are set up differently than others, and some trucks are as well. And so the best way, the fastest way around this track is right on that yellow line. But if your car's bouncy and you start to bounce up the hill and you have to come off the gas, then you can't go there. So maybe the lesser of two evils in that case would be to just drive up around it a little bit. But you want to be right on the bottom.
See David Starr waving. Ooh, big handful out of Taylor Malsom there. That 81, he's able to keep it pointed in the right direction.
You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, we got to tighten that up for you, Buck.
Yeah, probably so.
We've got to tighten that up for you.
What's cool, though, Phil, is when you make a mistake like this or have a wiggle like this and you don't pay the price. You know, he didn't bounce up into the 16. Look at it get sideways right there. He didn't overcorrect it. He didn't crash his truck. He learned a valuable lesson, and it didn't cost him anything. Now he knows, oh, darn, I thought my truck was pretty good, but that other guy made me get sideways.
And you know what's amazing is Brian Scott, it's almost like he realized that Taylor was in trouble beneath him, and he moved up the racetrack and gave him some extra room. And from where he was, it was probably impossible for him to see that happening, but yet he could feel it, I think, and could sense it. And that's how much experience that Brian Scott gained over this last year. Really finished strong. Had a great run. Our last race of the year at Homestead, finished in second. That is one young man that really is looking for win number one, and I would not be surprised to see him get it.
Moved over to that Toyota team, and like you said, Phil, run second down there at Miami, and I think the sky's the limit for this kid. He's got great sponsors there with Albertson, and he's in a good truck. And
how about Jeff Hensley on top of the pit box calling the shots too?
A lot of good things for him right now. And he's got that hat. Did y'all see that earlier?
He's got a hat. He's a referee in spare time.
Whoa! Problems right there. Ricky Carmichael got bumped. It slid him up the racetrack. He hits Brian Scott.
Just lock it down. Lock it down. Lock it down.
You heard Andy Houston saying, lock it down.
Whew.
When he said lock it down, that means lock the brakes up. Don't let that thing keep rolling any farther than it needed to.
And I think he was afraid when Ricky got over in that dirt, he didn't want to gas it up.
up off the ground, I believe.
Yeah, he had some help. He had some help. It turned him right into Brian Scott.
Yeah, you absolutely, it makes it very, very difficult. We've seen the bump drafting. These trucks really don't line up. The front,
Real slow, real slow. Don't want to tear anything up here.
the front bumpers on these trucks really don't line up as well with the back bumpers. You see how high Ricky's truck is, and he's one of the trucks that isn't coil bound.
Real slow. If one of them tires comes apart, it'll rip the body up on it.
Yeah,
Just go real easy.
That's Andy telling him to be very, very careful. Watch this now. That's Mike Bliss.
Wow.
And just as soon as he got to that rear bumper, it lifted the back end off the ground and turned him up into Brian Scott, it looked like.
And again, spectacular pictures by our cameraman. That was a great shot to be able to see
Now,
that.
how do you get spun sideways right in the middle of the back straightaway in front of a pack and nobody hit you?
And a nice job by Brian.
Oh,
Ooh,
Brian Scott got into the wall.
He did get into the wall a little bit harder, it looked like, on replay than I thought originally.
Yeah, that right rear hit the wall pretty hard. We saw some black marks on the wall after he went by.
You notice the roof flap not going up on that truck, even though it's backwards. The cowl flaps, you can see them coming up, but the roof flap did not come up. NASCAR will look at that.
Yeah, that'll.
Oh, this is a great shot here from turn 3, looking back, and watch this now. Watch that truck on the inside. He's going to get some help. Turned right into Brian Scott, and Brian had absolutely nowhere to go.
That might be a backup truck for Brian Scott, Phil.
It may be.
He
sure
hit
may be.
There's no safer barrier there, so that contact was right into the concrete.
Take another look. Again, the 40 is going to come right up behind and underneath that 4.
Yeah, look how low that bumper is. It just didn't quite match up. If that 40 truck would have been about 2 inches higher in the front end, then the bumper would have matched up better. But, you know, that's what Wayne Otten, our series director, will caution these drivers to Friday night in the drivers meeting. Be careful of the bump drafting. That bumpers really don't line up, and that's a perfect illustration of that.
There's a guy that's used to being down in the dirt and in the infield here at Daytona International Raceway. Ricky Carmichael's jumped more humps and done more wonderful things down there than anybody, but I don't think he liked it that time.
But normally not backwards. Normally he's facing forward.
We saw the damage to the 16 of Brian Scott. They were assessing that to see just how bad it is.
Looks pretty
Michael,
severe.
yeah, you had mentioned a great possibility of a backup truck.
Yeah, look at the cement dust around the wheel, between the wheel and the tire. That's a pretty good indication that you've made some pretty good contact with that outside wall.
And again, no doing of Brian Scott. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time as Carmichael came up the racetrack and forced him into the wall, right?
We can get Brian.
And guys, we just wanted to show you here, this is Ricky Carmichael's truck. He has just come back in, rear bumper here, and you'll notice where the tape is to show that he's a rookie. But look, it's just that tiny little bit of damage. You can see that that bumper is just barely pushed in. It really didn't make that much contact. A tiny little bit of damage over here on the right rear. They've assessed looking underneath this truck, and as I check out the rest of the whole front of the truck, there's no cosmetic damage there, so just a tiny little bit of damage. They got very, very lucky with what happened on the racetrack. Adam?
And a very unfortunate situation for this guy, Brian Scott. Rick Allen said it best, wrong place, wrong time. Tell us what happened on track.
I was just running the outside line trying to pull it through past the 4, and next thing I knew, the 4 was just coming up into me, and we were headed to the wall, and obviously I hit the wall with the right side. I guess the 40 was bump drafting out there or something. I don't know why you do that in practice. I mean, save it for the race. So it's just unfortunate. Our Albertsons Toyota Tundra's been really good ever since we unloaded. And I mean, I guess the only bright side is I got the best crew around here, and they'll get it fixed up, and we'll be just fine for tomorrow.
How concerned are you about the damage, and do you think you'll have to go to a backup?
No, we won't go to a backup unless there's something bent that we don't see, something in the suspension, or for some reason it bent, like I said, something we don't see. These guys will get it straightened out, and they'll look good as new tomorrow, I'm sure.
You guys just talked about Jeff Hensley being the crew chief. That's a big advantage in situations like this. Ray?
And just to give you an update, here comes Mike Bliss. He has come down to talk to Ricky Carmichael, and series director Wayne Otten is in the picture here also. Bliss coming down to explain to him exactly what he was doing or how he saw his side of it, and all smiles down here. It doesn't seem like anybody's too terribly upset, but we'll let Wayne Otten sit in the middle of this and have a discussion with these guys. Whether they need to determine any blame or not, we don't know. But the bottom line is the 4 truck with very little damage, so that's the really good news for KHI. And practice is now officially over, our second practice of the day here at Daytona International Speedway.
Well, guys, this is a situation where Mike Bliss definitely ran into the back of the 4 and put, turned him sideways. It's not that he wanted to, turn him sideways. He was trying to bump draft him to get him by the 16, and the bumpers didn't line up. Just the second he touched it, it just lifted the rear wheels off the ground and put the 4 truck up into the outside into the 16 truck. Under no circumstances was that intentional on Mike Bliss's part to try to do anything to that 4 truck.
And the first guys that will be challenged by this limited number of crew members that they can have inside the garage area is now that 16 truck.
Brian
Jeff
Scott.
Hensley and his guys are going to have to figure out how those 12 people that are working on that truck can best affect repairs. I think as they dig deeper in it, there's a real possibility they'll have to go to a backup
I think
truck.
so too. It looked like a pretty hard hit on the outside wall.
Again, smiles for Ricky Carmichael, saving the truck. No smiles over in this garage stall now. NASCAR Camping World Truck Series practice has concluded for the first day. 2009 season, Daytona International Speedway. It was an uneventful day right up until, well, the last lap, more or less, of practice. And it ended up where Mike Bliss got into the back of the 9 or the 4 of Ricky Carmichael. He slid up the racetrack, made some contact with a 16. And so we had our first real accident, I guess, of the 2009 season. And it was unfortunate for Brian Scott, but at the same time, he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, I mean, Mike Bliss came up to give Ricky a push, and he gave him too hard of a push. In retrospect, we know that for sure. But Mike did what we're going to see a whole lot of Friday night. Guys trying to help a guy along. You can see as he runs up on the back of the 4 truck, he's just going too fast to push him, and he pushes him sideways. Brian Scott's minding his own business and gets pushed right into the outside wall. This is a good way for folks to see they need to really be careful with this bump drafting. You can cause a big mess.
The other major story in this practice session was Kyle Busch apparently breaking a fitting off the valve cover in his 51 Miccosukee Toyota. There's Kyle right there actually spraying some brake clean on the back part of that truck because it put so much oil all over that truck that they're going to try to clean it up. But Kyle has been very involved with that truck in both practice sessions, working on it, and they've improved on that truck. But this is what happened when he was on the racetrack. This was right in front, I believe, of Brian Scott as well. So Brian has got a bird's eye view of everything that happened during the 3 hours of practice that we had today.
And you talked about that line. It's like a 1/4 of an inch big, but it made a heck of a mess.
Yeah, it sure did. Adam Alexander's caught up with Mike Bliss. Let's go down to the garage and hear from him.
And Mike Bliss making headlines, but not the way you would like in this situation. You talked to both the other guys involved, Ricky Carmichael and Brian Scott. So what'd you tell them, Mike?
Well, I mean, it was my fault. I'm not a big on going up and popping someone in the rear, but I'll push you. But it didn't dawn on me till everything happened that these trucks are coil bound and they're on the ground, and we're actually sliding underneath their rear bumpers. Because I didn't do anything to Ricky that you just don't do every day here. That I want to get behind him and feel him behind, just kind of push him on, not pop him. But I got his rear wheels up off the ground, and I tried to back off when he did that, and it unloaded his truck. And it didn't really dawn on me that we're sneaking underneath the rear bumpers because our noses are so low. So I am not going to do that in the race. I will make sure I'm not going to run right underneath somebody in the race.
And Jeff Hensley told me Brian Scott will race the primary. They're not going to a backup, Ray.
And Adam, Todd Bodine was just about to get in right behind that pack as that crash happened. Now, Todd has been fastest in both practices today here at Daytona International Speedway. And, of course, as we said, he's won the last 3 Super Speedway races in Camping World Truck Series racing. So you got to believe the 30 is going to be good. They know that tonight was the practice where they really wanted to find out how good their truck's going to be at night. Our practice tomorrow here at Daytona comes to you on Speed at 11 a.m.
Thank you, Ray. Now, again, a reminder, Ricky Carmichael, you can hear from him on the Speed Report, and that'll be right here on Speed. You can get his side of what just took place. We want to thank you for joining us here for Camping World Truck Series practice on Speed.